two-page, this report, which says up at the top, school KPI summary. It's actually 3 pages, 2 pages front and back. And along with that is this 1-page bond KPI summary. I'm going to first talk about the bonds KPI summary, but I'm going to first give 4 attaboy call-outs. I'm going to give an attaboy call-out to Martin Coyne for the bonds KPI summary. I'm going to give attaboy call-outs to Maggie, to David Page, to Chet Ratliff. I don't know, is Chet here?
Yes.
Most time between last meeting and this meeting has been spent with those 3 gentlemen, Maggie, David, and Chet. And I applaud their professionalism, their competence, and I want that to show in the record.
Thank you.
The Martin report actually was so easy because he's got all this stuff at his fingertips, and we didn't have to put as much man-hour time into these reports with Martin, but the thoroughness of them is there. So that's a given, and I'm going to just comment briefly. The bonds KPI summary, I want to talk about that first. You can see up at the top, it's as of May 31. One of the things that I would like for the future on these bonds KPI is to see if we can be a little tighter on it. In other words, we're now 60 days past as of 5/31. So that's my first observation is it'd be nice if this could have been, anyway, more current. So that's just something I'm requesting Martin to kind of look into in terms of, and maybe we'll be by nature 30 or 60 days, you know, lag on it. I don't know. This is powerful information in this table. And there's been some additions since the last time, and I want to thank Norma. June 22nd, her email to me was the only input I received from anybody about suggested changes. She had requested projected date by when principal would be paid. You can see that's on here. She suggested tax rate by measure. You can see that's on here. She requested something about debt ceiling, and she could elaborate on that, so I didn't know how to incorporate that, and we didn't really go over that. But she requested state matching funds were applicable by measure. Now, you can see that we have the matching funds received, and maybe Martin can comment briefly as to whether or not we had it by measure. At least we have the $163 million you'll see in there as matching funds received as of 5/31. Is it a by measure thing or not?
It's very difficult because we get it for us for each school. So for building, I was going to say Portland, but I'll change to a different one. Let's say, let's see what we receive. We'll say Richmond, Kent, all the schools we receive funds. It's over a long period of time, so it's not just one measure. Yeah, it's just, if I don't want to say it's from measure M, when it's really, you know, it's for the school site, it's not for a measure. I mean, I can tell you what the time period it was in, but I can't tell you what measure.
So in the interest of time, what I'm going to ask you is, let's keep this, you know, normally that was your request. We don't want to get down in the weeds too much because we don't have time to get down in the weeds.
Okay.
But I'm going to say right now, we don't have it by measure, but at least we has, as of May 31, we have $163 million total state matching funds applied to our whole.
And what I could do is give you a printout at each site that and then when money was received.
Okay.
So I mean, literally for every single site, adding up to that.
Great, great. And then total amount, Norma's other one was total amount of measures funds spent, and you can see that. I want to quickly draw that 952 measure amount spent. You see on bonds issued and measure amount spent, right? 952, 820. Everybody see that number? Mm-hmm. Then I want you to go, please, to the school's KPI summary, and I want you to go to the 3rd page, bottom right, the 993,864 spent to date. Mm-hmm. You say, oh my gosh, they're not the same numbers. Oh, what kind of fraud do we have going on, huh? Well, a couple things come to mind. Number one, the bond summary is as of 5/31. The other one you can see at the top of the report, the school's KPI summary, is as of 7/24. In fact, as David has reminded me, this report is exactly 7/24, 11:41:05 a.m. because this is a dynamic system with gazillions of transactions being processed and everything all the time. So that's the date and time stamp of this report. So to me, I don't want to make it frivolous and say the 993 is close enough for government work to the 952, but I am gonna say they're in the same ballpark, and there could be other things involved. For example, the 993 could include some actual matching funds, because one of the things that's, well, this is a draft. I want everybody to see that up at the top of the school's KPI. It's a draft, so it's a work in progress, and we're a hell of a far along on this, I'll tell you that. We've made tremendous progress on this, but it is a draft, and it is a work in progress. So one of the things we want to incorporate in the grand totals bottom line down there, and the guys are still working on that, is to get that matching funds somehow represented in that bottom line. So I'm saying that's at least I think a reasonable possibility of the difference between the 952 and the 993. Let me make some other quick comments. The current groupings on this school's KPI is in 5. There are 5 subgroupings. Note them are elementary schools. There are 38 official school sites, elementary schools, in this school district. Now, there are 39 listed elementary schools here. The reason is that the Vista Hills Elementary School is going to be moved over to the closed, because this, when it was done as of 7/24, that was one of the oopses that we didn't get moved over. So there are 38 active school, elementary school sites, including the Cameron, what is that called, early childhood, it's not exactly elementary, but it's listed in the elementary. There are 38. Right on this list right now, there are 39. Vista's being moved to the closed schools and programs. Second grouping, middle schools. According to the school district sites, there are 6. In fact, there are 6 on this report. High schools, third group. According to the district website, there are 11. Right now, there are 10 listed there, and the reason is that Gompers and leadership are shown together because project spending-wise, Gompers and leadership are being counted together. Leadership is the charter school. Gompers is the continuation high school. So that matches. 38 elementaries, 6 middles, and this 10/11 of the high schools. Corresponds exactly to what the website says. Those are our asset school sites in this school district. The next grouping, closed schools and programs. We're not going to take the time to go into what Kappa and Omega is and everything at this point. We can do that later. We can do it another time. But these, and unfortunately, I say unfortunately because it's not a perfect world. $2.7 million were spent on these closed school programs with the bond money since we started the program 15, 16 years ago. Add Vista back in there and you're going to get up to over $8 million. We can say, aw shucks, isn't that too bad? And it is too bad. But the point is, stuff happens. And these were closures that happened since the start of the school program, or since the start of the bond construction. The 5th category is administration and other, and it's fairly self-explanatory. Maybe there are some things we can do to make it more self-explanatory as this thing evolves. But this is what we got right now. Notice the current budget, 1719227 grand total. Gosh, that exceeds the $1,630,000 that we've approved. Well, there's the state matching fund and so forth. That's why we're going to get to the grand totals further clarified. The current budget represents what the school board, the latest school board approved budget. And therefore the schools themselves, that's primarily the 50-some school asset sites to me is where it really matters. That's what the current school, the latest school board budget. Notice we don't have an original budget in here, like original back whenever original was. One of the reasons we don't have it right now is because in talking with these gentlemen, there would be some zeros in the Primavera system because when we didn't have Primavera when we got started. And so it was my judgment, at least for starters, we don't need a bunch of zeros in there in the original budgets to confuse matters further and give everybody a chance to say, well, whoa, what deal with all the zeros? We can continue working on that notion of original budgets, but we're $1 billion along into something that will be, you know, $1.6 billion something, or if there's going to be some, and we're, to me, my judgment, but obviously welcoming the input from the CBOC. Original budget is a not helpful, not meaningful figure at this time. That's my comment and judgment on that. The revised commitment column, that includes the contracts and the obligations that the school district has issued against the budgets, okay? Now there are a couple of cases, like a total of 9 on this report, where the committed is less than the spent to date. My gosh, I wonder what that's all about. Well, it's a matter of pending change orders that are being processed. And they're all very, very close, except for Gomper's leadership, that combination there. You can look at some what look like some pretty wacky numbers. And Magny, we're not going to go into it, even though I alerted these guys to it, and you have some information about it. Those are some of the numbers we're going to further sanitize. Because right now, those look kind of squirrely. 78 million budget. Wow, 140 commitments, certainly more than the budget. And 34 as the spend, well, that one's not wacky. But anyway, the budget versus the commitment there is wacky. So that's one of the ones that we've already identified that are going to be looked at. There are a couple of other numbers on here we're going to be looking at. So I want everybody to know that that word draft up there is up there for a reason. Notes column at the very back on the page 3. These reflect what Dr. Harder had given to us in May. You recall we had a list of PowerPoint there of which ones are renovated, which ones are rebuilt, and often there's a combination. Some are renovated and some are rebuilt, depending. It might be a hybrid site. Not all of them were razed to the ground and built back up again. And then we got under construction and waiting to be rebuilt. So that's reflected in the project types column. And you can see some 4s in there. Let me make a quick comment on a 4 that I want to use as an example for a second. Let's take a look at Lake Elementary School on the front page. Lake Elementary shows a 4, yet to be waiting to be rebuilt. And you kind of move across that column. And, oh, by the way, notice the 17. That column there again reflects the number of individual sub-projects for each school site. Remember how I commented on the change order thing? We're looking at sub-projects up there. Whereas this page is looking at school site as a master kind of project. Okay? So that column gives us an indication of at least some degree of complexity of the school site project. All right? That's all it's meant to do. This is a summary page. It's not an end-all, be-all answer to everything. But I thought that column of number of sub-projects at location is kind of helpful in the sense that it indicates the relative complexity of these school sites. Move across with Lake a little further. So it started in May 2002, and I'll make a general comment now on all these start dates. I've already made an observation to Magny that, this start date column right now as we're using it may not be that helpful to us, and here's why. You look down through that, and you can say, geez, every school's been touched by this bond program, and they all happen to be in the early 2000s. What's going on? Well, the school district, when it got under the bond program, touched each of these programs in some way, each of these schools in some way with initial drawings. That's the one that makes the most sense to me, initial drawings. But that was the beginning. That was the start in the sense that that's when bond construction money started being spent. The thing I've asked Magdy and his team to look at is whether or not we could get to a helpful thing on this start column as being when did work construction actually begin. So we're looking into that. That might be a little more helpful to us in terms of the longevity of some of these schools. But right now, that start date actually means the start of spending, if I understand the system right. That's when we spent some money for it, so that's time 0. Okay? Keep moving across for Lake. January 2020. That's the latest forecast for the finish date. And then you look across and you say, gee, $1,585,000, that's not much to do a whole school site. Most of these are in the range of 30-something